I don't believe it can be used for serious production development today. However, I will say that the direction things are going is that there is definitely like a convergence happening on the front end and back end coming together, that AI someday is going to be able to handle kind of connecting these dots and creating performant applications. I do believe that that will be something that can happen in the future because...
Welcome to the AI Strategy Lab podcast with your host, Jimmy D.
Hello, welcome to the first episode of the AI Strategy Lab podcast. I'm Jimmy, and I'm going to be your host along the way here. So, quick intro about myself, since this is the very first podcast episode that we are launching here from the AI Strategy Lab. I am about 20 years into my career. Digital product management was kind of my main career. So I was building, different digital products, working mostly in the e-commerce space out in corporate America. And so now I'm an entrepreneur. I am the founder of Botified, where we help people with AI in their business and help them grow and thrive in that. So that is me. And look, I wanted to launch this podcast because I'm super interested in the space. I've got a lot of knowledge and things to offer. And, I kind of have want to share it with the world, I guess. And so first off, every episode we will go over some topic in AI, right? And my goal here is to do this kind of in like a Q&A format where I'm going out and researching all the common like questions that people are asking about a topic, and then I'll provide my own insight on answers, as well as some insights that I'm hearing other people talk about, and with the goal of you just learning and being able to kind of beat the curve in your own business and help you grow. So that's my goal here. This is primarily going to live on YouTube. So if you have any burning questions in the future, you can put them in the comments below, and I will take those comments and questions and bring them into future episodes. So that way we can get a little community going here. And that is the goal. So look, if you're driving, if you're doing some chores around the house, getting ready to exercise or something, let's dive right in and get going on this. The topic we're going to have today that I'm going to talk about is all about vibe coding. So if you're not familiar with what vibe coding is, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is, what it isn't, and things like that. So vibe coding in and of itself is this concept that was started kind of recently. The term was coined, I want to say it was probably this year. But there's a guy named Andrej Karpathy. If you don't know who he is from Tesla primarily. He spent many years with Tesla working on their AI auto driving system and things like that. But basically what vibe coding is it's a way of developing software that relies on natural language prompts to guide an AI in generating, refining, and debugging code for applications and prototypes. So a lot of people are using this today to sort of build quick prototypes, and it's completely a no-code process. So people are able to use large language models to prompt and ask and ask questions to the AI to then build something and give requirements and different ways to do that. So I've been vibe coding for a while now, and I've got a lot of like tips and tricks and problems that I've come across, and we'll talk a little bit about whether this is like something viable today that you can use in your business. But let's jump in. I've got a lot of questions that I've gathered from the internet in various places such as like Reddit and Quora and LinkedIn. So what are the things people are asking about vibe coding, and hopefully these answers will help you learn what you need to know for this in your own business. So the first question is, how does vibe coding differ from traditional coding by hand? Vibe coding, it uses AI to generate the code from simple descriptions in plain English. So you can go and type things like build a front-end interface of a web form and give it a blue button, right? And manually you'd have to code the HTML for that and all these things, whereas vibe coding is trained on a whole bunch of documents and coding syntax and all these things, and you're able to just have it generate for itself. So nothing to be done manually. And one of the tips that I would say here in terms of like vibe coding, traditional, differing from traditional coding by hand, is I found that if you keep the prompts really simple and kind of short, it works a lot better. So like if you put this long drawn out requirements document inside of one of the vibe coding platforms, um, it will attempt to build the majority of it, but it will miss a lot of it. Part of it has to do with the context window of the LLMs. Part of it has to do with the amount of CPU and GPU usage. So there's definitely limits on these things, but that's one like tip I would talk a little bit about here. So going on to the next question. So this is a kind of a bigger question, and it's one that I've sort of thought about myself, and I'll talk about my perspective on this. But can vibe coding be used for backend or serious production development? So today, I would say no. I don't think it can be used for production development or anything serious at the moment. Um, the reason being is that, and we'll talk a little bit about risks and things in a future question that we have here today. But the main reason is the LLMs are not quite to the point to where they can really connect the dots between the back end and the front end, nor can they create things, in my experience, that can be performant. A lot of I've created some really kind of complicated applications before using this, and I'm a non-developer, and the performance was horrible. And getting the performance to, like the page load speed and things like that was just not good. And it was likely something that I don't understand as it relates to how back end systems work with front end systems and APIs, or all of that stuff. There's probably something I was missing there, but I don't believe it can be used for serious production development today. However, I will say that the direction things are going is that there is definitely like a convergence happening on the front end and back end coming together, that AI someday is going to be able to handle kind of connecting these dots and creating performant applications. I do believe that that will be something that can happen in the future, because I see two worlds, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but there's definitely two worlds of products that are out there today that can vibe code. The first one is really good at like front end, I would say. And there's products like Lovable, V0, um, and Bolt. Those are really good at creating like front end interfaces. Whereas there's other ones that I would say are better at back ends and handling a little bit more complicated tasks, which would be things like Cursor, Replit. So those types of products, if you're familiar with those are getting really good at those tasks, and they do some front end stuff as well. But I would say, like, when these two worlds converge, I think that that's when you're going to find these products and vibe coding really taking off. And I know there's a lot of engineers and developers that are, I could see in a lot of the research I was doing, and I hear it in comments and forums and things where, there's a lot of hate on this vibe coding thing. But I would say that if I were an engineer today or a developer, I would be thinking strategically about how I need to use this in my own, my own business and what I'm doing in my daily basis. I just keep an eye on it, is all I'm trying to say. I think there's a role for human in the loop and engineers in the future, but I don't think it's quite what the role is today, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that in some future Q&A questions that are on this podcast today. So let's move to the next question. All right. So the next question is vibe coding beginner friendly? And what are the best ways to start? So this is a very common question I was seeing out there from people. So um, a really good way to start, and this is really the way that I started being a product manager myself, is prototyping. So this vibe coding technology can prototype things extremely fast. I was talking about a web form earlier. And if you've never done this or never experienced this, you really need to jump on one of these platforms and just play around with it. It is a lot of fun. Uh, Especially if you're a non-developer or non-technical, you can build things and you'll be very surprised at what you can actually build. But prototyping is something that this is really good at, and you can prototype things without setting up a backend. You don't need a database, anything like that. You can sort of create some fictitious information in there. So for example, maybe you want to prototype out something like a I don't know, like a well, I've done this before, like a chat interface. So let's say you want to prototype a chat interface that is, maybe something in the future you're thinking, oh, I'm going to create a chat bot and connect it to AI and things like that. Well, you can do that very easily and not connect it to any external AI systems or anything else by just letting the uh, Vibe Code LLM know that, hey, I want to create a prototype, use those words, and give it fictitious information. I want to be able to chat with this. It's a chat widget. Here's what it does. It's on the bottom of my website, and when the user clicks it, it comes up, and I would like to be able to converse with it. And then I will say these things, and when I say this, respond with that. Like basic things. If you wanted to like prototype something and show someone else your idea. So I see a lot of people starting to adopt this in you know in the corporate world, where you may be working for a brand, and you have an idea for the website or something, a kiosk or something, and inside a store, and you can prototype this, and think about the difference between like written word and actually prototyping something, and where people can touch it, feel it, see it, and it's something that's relatively real. It's so much better than writing some kind of requirements document, or some kind of you know you know some kind of, I don't know, uh, napkin drawings, or even like things like Figma. Figma's kind of cool to prototype, but uh, it's getting better with AI, but it's still difficult to do. So these are really fast, extremely fast prototyping solutions. So that's how I would get started with it, is just start playing around with it. It's pretty beginner friendly. Um, However, I would say that when you're starting to think about putting backends, like a database, connecting it and things like that, uh, it does help to have a little bit of development knowledge, just to try to just to understand, like, you know if you don't know what JavaScript is, or you don't know, like basically what it is, if you don't know what HTML is, like, you need to learn those things probably a little bit, just to be familiar with it. If you don't know about how backend databases connect to front ends, and then you can interact with them, get a little background in that. You don't need much, but just a little bit, it does help. The more you have, the better you can leverage these platforms. But you can definitely get away with not knowing anything, and playing around with it. The third thing is what I call scratch your own itch. So I have done this so many times where I had my own problem that I needed to solve, and I used the platform to go ahead and do that. One example I have is, actually, I wanted to build a directory website, and I have the website today, but I wanted to build it, and it was a situation where I could either choose like WordPress, who has like all these directory plugins, and then like manually modify it, or pay someone to go and do that. Or I thought to myself, maybe I can build a directory inside of V0, which is the platform I use the most, and use that to go ahead and scratch my own itch. I had a problem I needed to have solved, and uh, you know that's what I wanted to do, because there was certain things about that directory that it would it would take a lot of modification and things like that that I would need to do to make this happen in like WordPress or some other platform or something like that. So this was a way that I use it all the time to solve my own problems. Some other smaller examples would be um, if I need a UX designer, and this happened to me many times in the corporate world, where I would need a UX designer, and I just didn't have the resource. And so what I would be able to do here is just have it spin up something, some type of design, or maybe even like a chart. It's really good at doing things like that. Uh, Anything visual, right? That you might find on a website, a dashboard example. So it can do things like that. So, think about problems you have to solve for yourself, and then, scratch your own itch. So this is how I would think about beginner friendly ways to get started. So the next question we have here is, what are the main risks involved? So this is a pretty thorny area, and this is the area that I believe everyone needs to really pay attention to. There's like a ton of risks here if you're moving something into like a production environment and having like real users using it. But I'll just name a few here that are, very important, I think, every time you're dealing with these things. So the first thing is like security in general. So think about security of things like API keys being exposed, and other things that need to be secured. The database fields not being open to the public, in some way that they could be accessed or viewed. So inherently these tools do a decent job at this type of thing. Like the API keys are typically asked to be stored as variables, environment variables, which just means that they're just away from the public view. However, there's examples, if you search a little bit, you'll find where people have pointed out how things just get exposed right in the code, and someone has like published something to the public with a API key exposed and then someone can use that key and generate a ton of API calls, and you don't want that. So that is one area that I think is kind of a risk of using these tools. The next one is not setting things up properly to limit denial of service attacks. So if you don't set certain things up properly, you can get people that can basically take advantage of form fields that you have, or anything like that, and basically bring your site down through a denial of service attack if they really want to do that. So that's another area that you just have to be careful. And a third area, particularly if you're using AI in your app, just making sure you have proper budgets set up, so you can kind of limit exposure. So let's pretend you created that chatbot app, and you don't have the right things in place to prevent somebody from overusing the AI calls, and they could blow your budgets out if you don't have a budget set in the back end. So there's like some risks involved in these kind of things. You just got to think about these things. And as I was speaking about, I think like there is a role for engineers in this, where I think that there's probably like a business that can be formed from this, where an engineer could go out, and there's probably already happening, find people who are vibe coding and trying to put things in public, and saying, hey, let me look at this first. Let me take a glimpse at your code and make sure that it's performant. Make sure you haven't exposed any API keys. Make sure that you're not going to get denial of service attacks. Make sure you have the right infrastructure set up. And then I'll advise you and even fix things for you for a fee. So there's probably like a business out of that in the future, I thought of. So if you're an engineer and you're, maybe like thumbing your nose at this, like turn it around and go profit from it, is what I would say. So the next question we're going to jump on is, what tools and platforms are recommended for vibe coding? So there's a lot of things popping up these days. I would say the most popular ones are Lovable, Bolt.new, and V0. And I have a lot of experience with V0 personally. V0 is from a company called Vercel, and they provide a pretty decent platform where it does some like agentic coding. And what's really nice about that is you can deploy it very quickly into the Vercel environment. It's you know, Next.js is like a coding language that Vercel basically created, and Next.js is a super popular coding language that is used out there for businesses, and it's very fast and performant and things like that. So V0, I have a ton of experience with it. Now, another aspect to this is there's a kind of like powerhouse that's formed here in 2025 called Claude Code. And so I'm hearing a lot of entrepreneurs that are, getting into vibe coding. When you pair Claude Code with Cursor in particular, Cursor is another, coding platform basically where you can leverage AI through it. But if you pair these two together, Claude Code and Cursor, it's pretty much a powerhouse combination. And go try it. It's a little bit more advanced, I think, than some of these other platforms that are very visual. But Claude Code and Cursor, you can do some damage with those. So that's another common question I'm seeing out there is about like what are the tools and platforms? But those are the ones I recommend. Lovable, Bolt, and V0 are probably good for people to get started. And then Cursor, Claude Code. There's another one called Replit that you would want to try out, keep an eye on. It's pretty powerful as well. It's maybe not as user friendly as some of the other ones, but it's getting a lot better. But Replit is another great vibe coding platform. And the next question is, what are the best practices and tips for making the most of vibe coding? So I've got a lot here, so we'll go over them kind of one by one. The first tip I have is use vendors for complex things like payments, databases, and authentication. So if you try to build one of those things that are really complex, like a payment system within one of these vibe coding platforms, you're going to have a really tough time. And I have experience specifically with authentication, trying to build something around authentication. These systems are not good at it so far. I've not found a single system that can really spin up a great authentication system and really connect it well and have good session management of users and all of this. It's pretty much a nightmare if you don't know what you're doing. So, using things like Stripe for payment systems, PayPal for databases, things like Supabase is pretty user friendly for people to use, and then like authentication systems, maybe like Google OAuth. There's different things you can do. Those things are trained to like understand how to connect to Google OAuth. I have been very successful with connecting that into these vibe coding platforms, but anything else is kind of difficult. The second tip I would have and best practice is define your vision clearly. So really spend some time. Like you can start like vibe coding. Like I guess the idea of vibe coding is like you kind of throw something out there, then you like vibe to the next thing and vibe to this thing. But I have found the best products that I have built come out of really understanding the vision of what I'm looking for clearly as possible, especially the problem I'm solving, and like writing it down, thinking it through, and then the third point I have kind of ties into this one, which is carefully taking the time to plan out the UX and UI and the backend architecture. So I actually spend time, and I vibe code, or I vibe with Claude sometimes around this third bullet here, which is carefully take time to plan out the UX UI and the backend architecture. I actually give prompts to Claude about what I'm building and why I want to build it, and what I think it is, and what's the vision. And I put it in the context of, hey, I'm about to give this over to another LLM. How would you look at the UX UI here? What would be the architecture? I do that, and then it gives me some really good ideas to start with, and then I can send those off to the V0 or the Bolt or whatever to get my project started, and uh, that's been very helpful. And the next thing is like kind of ties in with this other one is maintain an instructions document folder. So what I do here is I take these vision and all these things and I put it in like a folder of instructions. And I've even done so far as to have like steps that maybe Claude had recommended step by step, and I will take those steps and say, okay, let's do step number one. Let's build the front end of the application, but let's not do anything with backend, or let's build the home page, whatever. And then okay, great. I've tested this. Let's go on to step number two. Step number two is build connecting the database, whatever it is. But keeping this instructions document up to date inside the folder and then referencing it during your chats with the LLM has been really helpful. The next one is craft detailed prompts. So try not to be too lazy with your prompting as you're kind of iterating with the LLMs. This can cause huge problems if you're lazy with it, where there's misunderstandings. And I say you've heard garbage in, garbage out. This is very, very relevant here in this case. Be detailed, but the next bullet I'm saying keep your prompts concise. So what I mean here is you want to be detail oriented and capture the fine details, but do not give really huge prompts with a whole bunch of requests. So for example, this document I talked about with Claude, don't take that document and just dump it in and then expect the product to be built. These are not there yet to be able to do that. I think someday they will be able to do that, but I would say ship small features, test, iterate on them, that kind of thing. Just do like one little small bites at a time and just make sure you test them really, really well. The last tip I would have here is maintain a file somewhere that's common mistakes to reference. So if these LLMs will make mistakes, and sometimes they'll continue making the same mistake over and over again, but you can stop that process by kind of documenting them into something and ask it not to make that mistake anymore. So for example, I had some issue where I was creating an application and the LLM kept making the same mistake of changing. It would basically blow out an entire page and change the page format and structure away from the style guide that I had given it and had been maintaining. And that was just a common mistake that it kept making. So I had to put in there, always maintain the style guide preference of XYZ colors and whatever that is into that common mistakes file. So then when I prompt say, please reference the common mistakes file to ensure you do not make mistakes when you move on to this next step. So those are some kind of best practices and tips for making the most of vibe coding. So now we'll move on to the next question here, which is, will vibe coding change how software is developed or impact jobs in tech? So I talked a little bit about this earlier, and we'll talk a little bit more here, but I do think it will impact how software is developed. It already is impacting it. Companies who are developing software, they're not using AI tools. They're just going to be so much slower than other companies that are. Interestingly, in 2025, Google backed survey showed that 90% of tech workers are using AI in their software development. So I found that to be encouraging news. But what is that other 10% doing? Like, why are they not using AI in their software development? So it's just an interesting question, and I think that the companies that can show efficiencies, especially if imagine you're like a third party development agency, or maybe you are that, and you start using these tools and you can build so much faster than XYZ agency. well, you're gonna maintain that client. You're gonna keep that client because you are just delivering so fast uh and helping them grow their business or whatever you're doing. So it's definitely game changing if teams are using this type of technology to build. Now, in the future, I I kind of talked about this before, but I really think this is going to shift the role of the traditional developer from being like less hands-on, but more focused on advanced operations. Like I said, the complexity of payment systems and things like that, uh, performance and security. So I think those are like three areas where you're really going to need human in the loop for these for the foreseeable future. I would not trust these applications to build something super meaningful uh, on day one without having some oversight. So that's where I think there's a little bit of an opportunity, as I mentioned before, for these engineers to kind of shift the way they're thinking about vibe coding. Because, like I said, there's a ton of hate happening in vibe code land around around these types of things, and it's unfortunate because I think this is what the future is going to be. But it's definitely happening out there. It's very prevalent. However, I think there's also like a different role, not from a developer standpoint, but a different role that uh, business people are going to be able to have as it relates to vibe coding, and it's already happening today. Like I'm a prime example of that. Like I said, I'm not an engineer by trade. I understand technical things, and I understand with the 20 years I've been doing digital products and things, I definitely understand how to speak the language. But as it relates to coding, not as much, right? And my role has changed so much more because I can actually build things, small applications, things personally for me, uh, extremely fast. Um, and I don't have to rely on other people. So I become very much more powerful. And if you are, an executive in a company or you run a business, um, train your teams, your non-technical teams, to use these no-code tools and get them using them, because you will be amazed at the ideation and the results that you'll get over time for these types of things. So it's definitely going to change the world of software development and the way that jobs in technology are going to be in the future. So jump on the train as soon as you can. The next FAQ question I saw was, what are money and cost considerations when using vibe coding tools/platforms? So the way these work right now is there's a typical like monthly fee. It could be like $20 a month, could be $60 a month, something like that, for like the personal or pro plans or whatever. But what those are doing is they're giving you an X amount of credits, and a lot of these systems are using like a credits model, very much like how APIs work. And you are using these credits, and then when you're out of the credits, you can either wait till your next subscription monthly fee hits, or you can add more credits. So that's the model a lot of these guys are using. So this can be a little troublesome, especially if you are running into some problems and you are kind of iterating a lot with the LLM, and it's maybe not solving the problem the way you need to. It can become costly over time. And I'll give you a story here. I tried to build an authentication system, and I got stuck in this loop. It was just incredible. I would say, hey, fix this one thing, and it would go and fix it, and I would test it. I would say, well, you didn't fix it. Try again, and it said, well, I did fix it. Oh, I found the problem. It always thinks it finds it. You'll see a lot of them. It's like, oh, I figured out what's going on. I found the problem. It's always this like really positive kind of conversation it has. But it got stuck in this loop to where it would go fix one thing, and then this thing would break, and then the thing that broke, it would fix that, and the other thing wouldn't work again, and it would just go back and forth. And I just kept iterating on this probably for 2 hours straight, and I was very frustrated. And then all of a sudden, I got a message that, hey, your credits are gone. If you want to keep working, pay us more. So luckily, I was able to reach out and get some refund on that because of the, that I don't know that was my issue. The LLM just couldn't figure it out, and it was unfortunate. So, but the company was nice enough to refund back the credits, and that was that. So I was very happy to have that happen. But hey, that's all I have for you today. That's a wrap. I hope that you learned something here at the AI Strategy Lab session. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.